Welcome back to my YouTube channel. For today's video, we'll continue our game, which involves making a 2D endless runner. And so what we will take care of today would be spawning. So we're going to undo how we're going to spawn in these various obstacles. That's the boulder and these two spikes. So let's get straight into that. The first thing we'll do is create a folder in our assets, and let's call this prefabs. Okay, so prefabs are sort of like instances of a game object which you can make, so that when you duplicate it and then you destroy the so-called original, it doesn't really affect it. And so let's go ahead and make a prefab for these three obstacles. First is the boulder, so let's drag it down here. Alright, so let's drag it down. And the second would be my spike, so let me click this and drag it down so I get the prefab of it. And the last would be my spike C, so let's drag this down. And now that I have a prefab for all of them, I can go ahead and delete them. So let's select the three of them and hit delete. Now for our spawning obstacles, this is going to be taken care of by a script. So let's go into our script folder. Let's right click, go into create C# script, and let's call this spawn. Let's call this spawner, and then let's double click this to open it up in Visual Studio. Alright, so let's go ahead and remove this start method because we're not going to be needing that. And also the update, let's take this out too, so we will not be needing this. And let's start by making game objects or declaring game objects which we are going to be spawning in. So this is going to be a public game object, and this is going to be an array since there are three obstacles, not just one. So let's go ahead and name these obstacles. And the next is going to be the time which this would take to be spawned in. So let me correct this. Alright, so yeah, so next is going to be a public float, so we can adjust the time depending on the time we want. So let's call this time to spawn float, time to spawn, and by default we can set this to 1f or maybe something like 2. So this should do. So next is going to be the position for our game object. Now, the way I'll get this is by going back into Unity and then seeing which position is fit. So let me quickly do that and I'll get back to you. Right, so now this is going to be a float. First float would be the X position. I'm going to set this to 13f, which is very long distance to the right. And then next would be another float. This would be another float, and this would be my Y position, and this is going to be minus 2.9 f. Alright, so with that done, the final thing we want to use is an integer. and this is going to be my spawn number. And there will be no value here temporarily, so that's how it's going to be for now. Now we can go ahead and create a void or a method called spawn. This will handle the instantiation. So let's start by filling in the details rather. So the first thing I want to do is to get this spawn number which I declared up there. So let's go ahead and get this spawn number, and I want to set this value to be a range. So it's going to be a random value which keeps popping. It's going to be random.range, and the range will be between 0 to 3, since I have only 3 obstacles for now. It might increase depending on the number which you want to fix in there. The next is going to be a vector tree, and this is going to handle the position of the game object which is being instantiated. So let's set this to a new vector 3, and for this new vector it's going to be the x position, the y position, and also 0. So let's put this way, and then the next thing would be to spawn in these game objects, and the way I would do this is by using a method called or is by using the instantiate rather. So this is the way you spawn in game objects inside of Unity. And so the obstacles now, let's get them. So I'm going to be spawning in the obstacles, which is the first thing I'm supposed to put in here, and then the number for these obstacles is going to be my spawn number. Alright, so that'll be it. Next is going to be the position which these obstacles are going to be spawned in. So let me type in position, and then we can't leave it this way because it doesn't really understand the vector tree. What it gets is a transform position. So right now what we have to do is we need to add this with a transform. So let's add the transform point, and this transform point is going to be 0 on the x, 0 on the y, and 0 on the z. So with this done, it's going to work out just fine. And finally, we want to get a rotation for this game object. So since there are no given rotations which it needs to abide by, all we have to do is set this game object dot transform dot rotation, and with this we're done with the instantiation. Now this is just a temporary method, so it's not going to be called upon unless we call it in a way, and we don't want to put this in the update because it's going to be called every frame, which is not good for us because it's about it's really fast when it comes to the update since it's a float value. So what we do is we go up here and create a new method. So we can call this void, and then we call on the awake function, which is called before the game gets loaded. And this awake, what it will do, what we put inside is we invoke repeating. So this is a method that keeps calling itself, and then we put in the method name. In this case it's going to be the spawn, and then we put in a start weight for this. So let's put something like 3F, just the start value, and then finally we put in the time which it waits for continuously. So in our case, it's going to be our time to spawn. So this is it. Now we can save this and take a look at it inside of Unity. So let's save and go back in there. Alright, so once this gets done loading, all we need to do is to go ahead and create an empty game object. So let's go into create empty, and then let's rename this to spawner. So this is where our game objects are going to be spawned from. Let's reset the transform to make sure everything is at the default. So we can drag this spawner script inside of this. And now for the size, we want to put in 3 and hit enter. You see it gives access to 3, it gives 3 spaces for game objects. And so we can go back into our prefabs, which I arranged to make them look in order. Now I can drag this boulder to be the number 1 up here, the spike C over there, and then these iron spikes as the final one, so it should be somewhere there. And the time to spawn for now is set to 2. We can adjust this depending on how things turn out to be. So let's test the game now to make sure it works. Alright, our player is running and you can see it works, but this is a bit too fast because at this rate I would not be able to jump all of these and avoid them. And you can see our boulders are moving at a faster rate than the normal spikes. So we can go ahead and attempt to jump. You can see it goes past the first, but the second and the rest, they get him. So we can reduce this time to spawn to something like 1 and test it out again. Alright, that's it. That still seems a bit too fast. You can let's increase this to maybe something like 3 or so. So with this, I believe there is space for a player to jump over a few game objects. So let's jump over the first one, and then there is still space to jump over the rest. But at this rate, my boulder speed is way too fast, which takes my player away. So that can be adjusted by going into the boulder and adjusting the speed. That should not be a problem. And then make sure this time to spawn is at a rate that allows your player to jump over these obstacles. That's for those following this tutorial. Now what I would want to handle is destroying these game objects, because obviously I don't want more and more game objects stored inside of this. So I want this to be destroyed once it gets to a certain position behind the player. And so for this to be done, what I have to do is go into the script, the obstacle script, and then open this up in Visual Studio. Alright, so once this is open, what I need to check is the position on the x-axis. So in this case now, what I would want to do is I want to use an if statement. So I will check to see if the transform dot position dot x, if this is less than minus 15 or minus 16, then we want to go ahead and destroy this game object. So we can turn this into a float. Let's hit private float. Let's call this distance. And then let's make this minus 16 f, and then we can change this number into distance. Alright, so once this is less than, all we have to do is destroy this game object. So we destroy game object, and this is all we have to do. This would take care of crashing inside of the software or the whatever platform the game is playing on. So let's load this. Alright, so we can test this now to see if it works. So let's remove this maximize on play, because we want to be certain that it works. Then we can hit the play button. Alright, so a game object has been instantiated. This is the spikes. You can see a clone is being made for each of them. So let's see if they get destroyed or not. Alright, you can see it's getting destroyed. Well, anyway, you can see that it's instantiating as well as destroying a few game objects that are over there. So this handles the situation in a way, but then the boulders are not getting destroyed because I did not attach this destroy line of code to it. So all we can do, or all we have to do, is copy this, then go into the boulder, then inside the update we can paste this, and also create a private float. Let's call this distance, and this would also be minus 16f. Yeah, so this should take care of everything, and with this done, the boulder will also be destroyed as well as the other obstacles. So with this, we've come to the end of today's video. If you enjoyed this video, like my content and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for watching, and hope I see you in the next video.